It was just after 5 a.m. I was still in my sweatpants, trying to fix a broken line of code. Then, 3 knocks at the door. Not loud, not rushed, just steady. I opened it. There was a baby, in a car seat, wrapped in a blue blanket, no one else beside him. A duffel bag, a folder, a sticky note on top that said, "He has nowhere else to go." No name, no instructions, no signature. I stood there frozen. He looked up at me, didn't cry. Just stared. I brought him inside. Set the car seat on the rug. Checked the bag. Formula, diapers, a few clothes, a folded paper on top. My name, Callum Reeve. Listed as temporary guardian. Signed by Delia Marston. I hadn't seen her in 4 years. The baby, his name was Theodore. Theo for short. I held him while he slept. Then opened the folder again. Inside, birth certificate. Medical records. A prepaid phone. A copy of the guardianship form. Delia's name was there. So was mine, but I never signed anything. They copied my signature from an old lease. It wasn't legal, but it looked real enough. I turned on the phone, only 2 messages. One was a voice note, Delia's voice, soft, tired. "Callum, if you're hearing this, it means I couldn't stay." That was it, no reason, no goodbye. The second message, just a location pin, a house outside Charlottesville. That night, Theo fell asleep holding a wooden rattle. My initials were on the handle. I made it for Delia when we were still in college. I sat there. No tears, no panic, just one thought repeating in my head. She left him with me, because I was the last one she trusted. I wasn't built for this. That's what I kept telling myself. Not a dad, not even an uncle. I didn't know how to warm a bottle. Didn't know babies had to burp after feeding. The first night, he screamed for 2 hours. I paced the apartment like it was on fire. Googled everything. Held him too tight, then too loose. Spilled formula on my laptop. At 3:18 a.m., he finally fell asleep. On my chest, both of us soaked in sweat and silence. By day 3, I hadn't showered. Hadn't coded a single line. Missed 2 meetings. My team thought I had the flu. I didn't correct them. I took Theo to the pediatric clinic. Said I was his legal guardian for now. The nurse smiled, said I looked tired. I nodded. The doctor asked, "Do you have his sleep schedule?" I laughed. Sleep is not happening. She didn't laugh back, just handed me a printout, said, "Start logging everything. Bottles, diapers, naps." That night, I built a spreadsheet. Labeled it Theo System. Color-coded feeds, marked down cries with time stamps. I was coding my way into parenthood, 1 cell at a time. On the 5th day, I found an unopened letter in the duffel bag. From Delia. No envelope. Just folded paper. "Callum, I know this isn't fair. I had no right to ask you for anything. But I didn't know who else would see him. Not just look, but really see. If he ends up with you, it means something went wrong. But maybe something can still go right." She didn't sign her name, just drew a small heart. I sat with that letter for a long time. Theo asleep again. This time in a basket lined with my old hoodies. He looked peaceful. Like he didn't know he'd been handed off like luggage. I reached for the rattle again, spun it once in my hand. It still made that soft clack sound. I didn't feel ready. Still don't. But when he opened his eyes and reached for my face, I stopped thinking about who I was and started becoming someone I never planned to be. I stared at the signature again. My name, perfectly copied, but not mine. I don't write my A's like that anymore. Haven't since 2019. Whoever signed the guardianship form used an old lease, old habits, old assumptions. They thought I wouldn't notice, or that I wouldn't care. They were wrong. I called a lawyer, found her name on a forum for single dads, pro bono family law. Her name was June Ravel. She answered on the second ring. Calm voice, straight to the point. "Send me the documents, all of them. And don't talk to anyone else until you do." I scanned the folder, sent the PDFs. Waited. Theo was asleep on the mat, rattle in one hand, his sock half off. I didn't realize I was shaking until I tried to type. My hands weren't built for battles, just code. But this was war, quiet war. June called back an hour later. "This signature is fraud," she said. No question, but they covered themselves. I waited, didn't speak. "There's a clause," she continued. buried in the notarization. A power of attorney transfer in case of disappearance or medical incapacitation. But there's no medical proof, no official missing person report. So it's fake. It's legal enough until it's not, and if there's money involved, you need to find it. Fast. Money, I hadn't even thought about that. I opened Theo's birth certificate again. Mother, Delia Marston. Father, blank. Back in the folder, bank papers, one joint account, set up by Delia. 2 months before she disappeared, one withdrawal, $34,900, gone 3 days after the fire. Destination: a trust account under someone named Margaret Avery. Not Delia's mom, not anyone I'd heard of. I sent the name to June. Dig, she said. I stayed up all night, searching everything I could. Margaret Avery. Age, 62. Retired from some foundation. Lives in the Blue Ridge Mountains. I checked the phone again. The old burner Delia left. One contact in it, M. I called, it rang once. Then voicemail, no name, just, you shouldn't be calling this number. Click. I stared at the screen, then at Theo, still asleep, still trusting. I whispered, I'm not giving you back to strangers. I don't care who signed what. And for the first time, I meant it. The call came at 2:14 a.m. I was half asleep on the couch. Theo was curled up beside me, breathing slow and shallow. The burner phone buzzed. No name, just a number, 9 digits, unregistered. I answered without speaking. A woman's voice. Older, measured. Like she'd practiced this in her head. Is the baby safe? I didn't respond. Callum, I know you have questions, I'll answer them, but not on this line. Click, I stared at the phone. No callback option, no voicemail. 5 minutes later, a text came in, 7 a.m., 117 Cherry Glen Road. Come alone. Bring nothing but the folder. That was it. At 6:40, I loaded Theo into his car seat, packed an extra bottle, left him with June's assistant in her office. June didn't ask why, just said, keep your phone on. If you're not back by 9, I'm calling the police. I nodded and left. Cherry Glen wasn't a house, it was an old hunting cabin. No mailbox, no neighbors, just trees and fog. She opened the door before I knocked, short gray hair, sharp eyes, no smile. You came. I stepped inside, smelled like cedar and old paper. She pointed to a chair. I sat. She didn't. I'm Margaret, she said. I was Delia's guardian after the state pulled her from her mother at 14. I blinked. She never told me that. She didn't tell many people, Margaret said. Delia was quiet, sharp, untrusting, until she met you. She poured tea, didn't ask if I wanted any, just kept talking. Delia was dying, she didn't tell you. She didn't want pity, and she didn't want a fight. Then why me? I asked. Why not anyone else? She said you saw her, not the version she performed, not the mess, just her. I didn't say anything, because part of me already knew. She left the baby with you, Margaret said, because she believed you wouldn't run, even if it was hard. She was right. I swallowed, even when I wanted to. Margaret reached into a drawer, pulled out an envelope, pushed it across the table. Inside, a second copy of the guardianship form, this one signed by a judge, legit, stamped, finalized. She filed it with the court 3 days before the fire, Margaret said. She did everything right, but her mother didn't like that. Her mother. I frowned. Delia's birth mother. She wants the inheritance. The baby comes with it. The air in the cabin went still. Like the trees outside were holding their breath. She'll come for him, Margaret said. Not because she loves him, because he's a key. To what? To the last thing Delia owned, Margaret said. A trust, worth $500,000. I leaned back. You're telling me this kid's a ticket. Margaret didn't blink. I'm telling you, he's a target. And you're the only wall standing between him and the woman who destroyed Delia's life. Theo didn't know any of this. Back at the office, he was probably chewing on a crayon or giggling at ceiling fans. I stood, took the stamped copy, put it in my bag. Are you with me? I asked. Margaret looked me in the eye. I was with Delia, now I'm with you. The first time I saw her, she was wearing pearls and a coat that probably cost more than my rent. She walked into June's office like she owned it. Didn't knock, didn't ask, she just said, I'm here for my grandson. June didn't blink. Neither did I. Her name was Celeste Marston, Delia's birth mother, estranged, unlisted on every emergency contact Delia ever gave. But now, she had a folder, a lawyer, and a tone that made every word feel like a warning wrapped in sugar. "I'm here to assume guardianship of Theodore," she said. "My daughter was not well. She made impulsive decisions. This arrangement was never legal." I stayed seated, hands folded, eyes steady. June stepped in. "Actually, it was. We have the judge-certified guardianship file, notarized and filed in full compliance." Celeste smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Temporary guardianship," she said. "Surely you don't think that makes you family?" I didn't answer, didn't move, just let the silence do the talking. She turned to me. "You work from home, alone, no parenting history. What makes you think you can raise a child with no blood tie?" I finally stood, not loud, not angry, just steady. "I don't think I can, I just am." She scoffed. "You have no legal claim to his trust. No right to decide how he's raised. He's Marston blood, he belongs with me." June leaned forward. "You abandoned Delia at 14, never attended a single custody hearing. We have records, witnesses. And now, you're only here because that trust fund matures in 6 months." Celeste didn't flinch. "Money aside," she said, "I'm his grandmother." I reached into my folder, pulled out a photo. Theo asleep on my chest, one hand curled around my collar. "This," I said, "is what family looks like. It's not in the blood, it's in the staying." Celeste stood slowly, gathered her coat. But before leaving, she looked at me like I was an unpaid bill. "You'll hear from my attorney," she said. June nodded. "We already have." After she left, the room felt colder. Not because of the temperature, but because of what she didn't say. This wasn't a visit, it was a warning. She didn't want the boy. She wanted the leverage. Back home, Theo was building towers from cereal boxes. He smiled when he saw me, held up a block like it was treasure. I sat on the floor. Let him climb into my lap. And I whispered, "You're not a chess piece, buddy, and I'm not letting her play you." He babbled something back. It didn't mean anything, but I answered anyway. "Yeah, I feel that too." The envelope arrived 2 days before the hearing. Thick, stamped, aggressively professional. Inside, petition for custody, filed by Celeste Marston. She claimed I was unfit, claimed Delia had been unstable, claimed the trust was at risk under the care of an unrelated guardian. She thought she had the upper hand. She had money, lawyers, blood, but she didn't have one thing: Delia's voice. I opened the last backup I had on Delia's old burner phone, an audio folder. Encrypted, I ran recovery software, found one file. Dated 2 weeks before she died. I played it on my laptop. Her voice, clear, tired, but strong. "If anything happens to me, Theo goes to Callum, not my mother, not her lawyers. Callum, he'll never leave him wondering why." I sat in silence, staring at the screen, goosebumps, tears I didn't feel until they hit my collarbone. June leaned back in her chair. "That's not just a statement," she said. "That's intent. That's gold." We had one other thing, too. The hospital records. Delia listed next of kin, Callum Reeve, not Celeste. That wasn't just a preference. It was legal. But it got better. I'd kept a digital log, every message, every file, every missed call since the day Theo arrived, including one email, a forwarded message Delia sent to a notary office. Subject line, confirming legal handoff of custody to Callum Reeve. Dated. Signed. With attached scan of her ID. June smiled when I showed her. "She covered every angle," she said. "She knew this was coming." Celeste didn't. She walked into the courthouse with silk gloves and a diamond pin. I walked in with a diaper bag and a folder full of receipts. Theo babbled in my arms. The judge smiled at him. That helped more than anything we could have said. Celeste's attorney opened with flair. "Your Honor, my client seeks to reclaim guardianship of her grandson, to ensure the proper handling of his trust and long-term care." June stood. "Your Honor," she said, calm but cutting. "We have a recorded statement from the mother, a notarized declaration of custody intent, hospital records listing Mr. Reeve as next of kin, and documentation showing Ms. Marston made no legal or financial contribution to the child's care. The judge raised an eyebrow. Recorded statement. We played it. Delia's voice filled the courtroom. Even Celeste couldn't fake a reaction. Her lips tightened. But her hands shook. The judge leaned back, took a moment, then said, "I've seen enough. This isn't a case of contested custody. It's a case of convenience versus commitment. Custody remains with Mr. Reeve. Review of the trust will be handled separately, but the child stays." Celeste didn't move, didn't stand, didn't speak, just stared, like someone had taken her name off a door she thought was hers. Outside, June patted my shoulder. "You just became a full-time parent," she said. "No more temp contract." I looked at Theo. He yawned, then smiled. I whispered, "Permanent sounds fine to me." We didn't celebrate. No champagne, no big announcement, just pancakes. And silence, and Theo's laugh when the syrup stuck to his fingers. Sometimes peace doesn't sound like anything. It just feels like. Enough. The court mailed the final papers a week later. Custody, permanent. Visitation, denied. Trust, protected. Theo was mine now, not by blood, not by plan, but by every choice I made after the knock at my door. I cleared out the guest room, painted it pale green. Theo helped, which mostly meant smearing his palm into the tray and giggling. We hung up his first drawing. A scribble, looked like a tornado had emotions. I framed it anyway. Work slowed down. Freelance projects took longer. I got used to typing with one hand and holding a bottle with the other. Some days I missed who I used to be. Quiet, efficient, in control. But then Theo would run to me with a crayon and a look like, "This matters." And I'd remember. I wasn't losing myself. I was remaking someone new. The studio happened by accident. It started with a corner desk, then a second monitor, then a donation bin on the sidewalk full of old computers. I fixed them, one by one, posted about it online. "Free laptops for foster youth," I wrote. Didn't expect much. The inbox blew up. Now, every Thursday and Saturday, 5 kids come in, sit on the rug, learn to code. Some are loud. Some don't speak at all. Some just need the snacks and quiet. I don't teach because I'm good at it. I teach because I know what it's like to feel like no one planned for you. Theo sits near the window, builds towers out of blocks, sometimes knocks them over, just to clap at the sound. He's 3 now, asks questions I can't always answer. Last week he pointed at an old photo of Delia. "Who's that?" I paused. "That's your mom," I said. "She loved you so much. She made sure you'd never be alone." He nodded, didn't ask more, just kept looking, like he knew something I didn't. At night, after dishes and stories, I sit by the window, laptop open, studio dark, Theo asleep, and I whisper, "You were never the plan, but you're the reason I built one."